Toronto. Now, I know it's time for me to deliver the no half-step in hockey coverage, so let's get to the goods. Time for operation number 710. That's right, show 710 for the Renegades of Puck. And at this moment in hockey history, the Nashville Predators currently find themselves in 5th place in the Central Division. 48 games skated is the least amount of games skated within the division. They hold a record of 24, 18, and 6, 54 points. They have a home record of 14, 7, and 3. They have a road record of 10, 11, and 3. They've scored 137 goals in the season. They have given up 141 goals in the season. That is a goal differential of -4. Now, taking a look at the rest of the Central Division from the top down. Let's start with the Dallas Stars. They've skated in 51 games. They have a record of 28, 13, and 10. Those 13 losses represent the least amount of regulation losses in the Central Division. 66 points has them 1 point clear of second place Winnipeg. But it is the Dallas Stars that also lead the division in goals for with 173 total scored, and goals against. They've given up the least amount in the division at 133, giving them also the best goal differential at +40. In second place, you'll find the Winnipeg Jets, who have skated in the most games in the Central Division to this point at 52. They also have the most regulation wins in the division, 32. 65 points is second overall, has them 1 point behind the Dallas Stars. The Minnesota Wild are in third place. They have skated in 48 games, as well as the Colorado Avalanche and the Nashville Predators. So the three teams that are jumbled up right here have all skated in the least amount of games in the Central Division. The Minnesota Wild have 58 points. They are 4 points behind the Dallas Stars. The Colorado Avalanche at this point in the season, 48 games skated, 27 victories. They have 57 points on the season, and the Nashville Predators are sitting 3 points behind them in 5th place. Nashville Predators at 54, then St. Louis at 49, but the St. Louis Blues are not only 5 points behind the Nashville Predators in the standings, they've also skated in 3 more games than the Nashville Predators, competing 51 times already this year. The Arizona Coyotes sit in 7th place with 38 points overall, and the Chicago Blackhawks are in the basement with 34 points. They have also only scored 118 goals in the season. That is the least amount in the Central Division, but they have not given up the most. It's the St. Louis Blues that have given up the most goals within the Central Division at 185 on the year. But Chicago does have the worst goal differential overall at -58. Now, for the Nashville Predators, they currently sit 3 points behind 4th place Colorado, and they sit 4 points behind an automatic playoff qualifying spot of 3rd in the Central, which is currently held by the Minnesota Wild. So for the Nashville Predators, let's take a look at where they currently sit on the season and what's left to go. 17 home games and 17 road games make up the rest of the schedule. In the month of February, the Nashville Predators will skate in 10 total games, not back on the ice until February the 7th after the All-Star break. That's when they will take on Las Vegas, and then they will have a couple of days before heading into Philadelphia on the 11th of February. The 13th of February, we'll see the Preds back home against the Arizona Coyotes. The 16th, the Boston Bruins will be here in Nashville, and then Florida, Minnesota on the 18th and 19th, and that is the first back-to-back post-All-Star break. The Nashville Predators will go on to the month of March, and this is where the schedule is going to be the most critical. It features the longest road trip remaining on the season, also the most games total. 16 games in total, 8 of 9 taking place on the road between February the 23rd and March the 12th. So that lengthy road trip will start on March the 2nd in Florida and then go to Chicago, Vancouver, Arizona, Los Angeles, and Anaheim before the Preds make it back home in the middle of March to face off against Detroit and Chicago. And then we'll have a back-to-back with Winnipeg Jets and the New York Rangers, a home and away back-to-back. So for the Nashville Predators, 10 games in February, 16 games in March, and they'll wrap up the regular season with 8 games in April. But in April, out of those 8 games, they will have 2 more back-to-backs, and the last 2 games of the season, which could be critically important, those also will be back-to-backs on the 13th and the 14th of April, and they are both Central Division games versus Minnesota and versus Colorado, 2 teams the Nashville Predators are currently battling for that 3rd and final playoff spot in the Central Division. So the breakdown is 10, 16, and 8 by month, February, March to April, 17 home, 17 on the road, 6 total back-to-backs. Noted a couple of notes on here. 3 games versus the Arizona Coyotes, 2 games versus the Chicago Blackhawks. So that's a total of 5 games within the Central Division against teams that are below the Nashville Predators in the standings. They also have 2 games versus Minnesota and 2 games versus Winnipeg, also within the Central Division. And again, competing with these teams. Winnipeg right now well clear of the Nashville Predators, but the Preds could gain some ground on them in the coming weeks. You'll also see 2 games versus Seattle, Pittsburgh, and Boston. Now, Seattle happens to be a first-place team. We'll review the Pacific Division standings here in just a couple of minutes, but Pittsburgh and, of course, Boston is the story of the entire season at this point. So that gets you set up for the Nashville Predators and what the schedule looks like moving forward. Now, let's talk about a couple of other things. In the wild card race for the Nashville Predators, where do they currently stand? Well, Edmonton holds the number 1 wildcard spot at 60 points. Colorado with 57. Calgary tied with Colorado 57. And then there's the Nashville Predators at 54 points. St. Louis is the next team in line at 49. So for the Nashville Predators to get into the wildcard hunt, they will have to displace at least 2 teams. And that is absolutely possible moving forward, because I wanted to make notation of a couple of notes from last season. Last year at this exact time, when the Predators were going into the All-Star break, they held a record of 28-14-4. That was 60 points. 6 more points than they have right now. But they finished 45-30-7 with 97 points. That was good for wild card 2, and of course they were swept by the Colorado Avalanche in the first round. Now, post the All-Star break, a record of 17-16-3. So the Nashville Predators were actually under 500 post the All-Star break and still made it into the playoffs. Can the Nashville Predators make up that 6-point differential and beyond to displace at least 2 teams in the Western Conference playoff race? Yes, I do believe they can, and having 5 games total against Arizona and Chicago, and also having head-to-head matchups against the team ahead of you in the standings, is something that will allow the Nashville Predators to compete for those final playoff spots. Now, critical importance right here when it comes to talking about not only the wild card but potentially a playoff is how the Nashville Predators are going to fare against and what they're going to be able to accomplish against certain division matchups. Now, the Central Division is, of course, of the most significance. Those were what we call 4-point swing games. Against the Central this year, the Preds are 5-6-3. They have 12 games remaining on the season, and a lot of the damage has been done by the Dallas Stars. So for the Nashville Predators, they need to improve significantly what they've done against their own division moving forward. Against the Pacific Division, 9-3-2 on the season, and they have 10 games remaining against Pacific. But 2 of those games are against the first place Seattle Kraken, and also Vegas will be involved some more. The Metropolitan Division, the record against so far this season, 8-3. 5 games remaining against that division, and the Atlantic Division, a record of 2-6-1, 7 games remaining against that division. So the Nashville Predators in those games have to find a way to get some points, but the Central Division and those 12 games remaining are your most critical, especially when it comes to teams below the Preds in the standings. They have an opportunity to gain some ground on the teams above them by playing competition that is less than them. I thought those numbers stood out, and I thought they were unique and interesting to the Nashville Predators for all their faults and flaws this season, all the underperforming this season, that they're only 6 points off the pace where they were last year. Now, right now, the number 1 seed would be a wild card matchup with the Dallas Stars if the Preds were to finish in the final position they were last year. And so far, the Dallas Stars have absolutely eviscerated the Nashville Predators on the ice. Now, for the Preds, where we stand at the All-Star break, getting away from the schedule, getting away from the records and all of that, here is where the team itself ranks in a whole bunch of different statistical metrics, and I expanded out to a couple of different fields than what we normally do on the day in and day out episode. Goals for on the season, Nashville Predators are 26th in the NHL, 2.81 is their total. Goals against, 2.92 is 14th in the NHL. In shots for, 31.4 on net per game, 18th best in the NHL. Shots against, 34.5, that's 29th in the NHL. The power play, it's not been great all season long. 16.7% is not a good conversion rate. It's best for 27th out of 32 teams. 26 conversions out of 156 power play opportunities. The penalty kill rate, 80.5%, not bad, right in the middle of the pack. 14th overall in the league. 33 power play goals against. I went beyond those fields and I sought out a couple of positive statistics for the Nashville Predators, because as you see, a lot of those are lower third of the league statistical metrics, and the Nashville Predators, I wanted to find some areas where they had been performing. Now, In the physical component of the game, the Nashville Predators have 1,406 hits on the season. That is fifth best overall in the NHL in hits per 60 minutes, 28.92 hits per game, and that is best for second overall in the NHL. In blocked shots, the Nashville Predators have blocked 766 shots on the season. That is good for 10th best in the NHL. I was able to find 3 top 10 metrics for the Nashville Predators, and I wanted to make sure I brought those to your attention just so you can see a more complete picture. Now, beyond the schedule, beyond the standings, beyond the rankings, of course, the Nashville Predators, it's going to come down to who's able to be on the ice and who is out injured. Right now, and for the most part this season, the Nashville Predators have been a relatively healthy NHL club. Carrier is still going to be out for approximately another month coming out of the All-Star break. Mark Borowiecki, we do not know if he is going to return this season. He is still listed as just on injured reserve. But that is 2 defensemen for the Nashville Predators, and you've got to wonder, is this going to factor into the upcoming trade deadline? Will the Nashville Predators be out there shopping for some support on D and some support on offense? I've made the case right here that the Nashville Predators are well within striking distance without that many clubs in front of them with 34 games to go in the season. I do believe David Poile is going to make some minor moves to go ahead and bolster the defense core and possibly bring in 1 or 2 more forwards to help round out the lineup. You've seen the lineup has been in constant flux this entire season. John Hines has barely been able to settle on a line combination for more than a handful of games before he starts tinkering with them again. So I have no doubt that there could be some change coming to the lineup, and the Carrier injury, more than anything, I think affects that on the defensive side of things. Now, for the Nashville Predators, there's also a couple of really bright spots I just wanted to mention before we move on and start talking about the analysis portion of things, and that's the Milwaukee Admirals. Milwaukee Admirals having a good season and a couple of good prospects doing really well. Everybody remember Cole Sherwood from the opening series of the season? Well, he's got 18 goals and 13 assists down in Milwaukee for 31 points. That's leading the team. Luke Evangelista, 8 goals and 22 assists for 30 points. Second on the team, Philip Tomasino, 12 goals and 17 assists for 29 points, having a really, really nice year in Milwaukee. Schneider has 15 goals and 12 assists for 27 points. And Tommy Novak still 5th on the Admirals in scoring, even though he's been with the Nashville Predators now for a couple of weeks. 11 goals and 15 assists for 26 points. Now, ask